because I trusted you and I liked you. But when
I liked you too.
But no, you want to.
You're accusing me of something with no proof.
In The Godfather, baby, it says, "Be wary of the person who brings you the information." Phaedra, you gave me everything.
What you mean?
You gave me everything.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's your girl, the Brooke Ashley, and today we are here to discuss The Real Housewives of Atlanta, Season 16, season finale. And before we get into it, let me start off by saying that this finale was low-key a flop. I don't know if it was just me, but it felt very rushed. It felt discombobulated. Something about this finale felt off to me. Let me know if you guys felt the same way. But I expected more for a finale episode. Now the big gotcha moment with Angela exposing Phaedra and Marcus coming out to say that Phaedra put him up to it, it sort of fell flat to me, only because it just felt like I was watching a comedy at one point. And a quick disclaimer, there were so many filler scenes in this episode that I'm going to be breezing through quite a lot of them because a lot of these scenes were not giving a whole lot. But without further ado, let's jump right on into it because you guys already know that we don't have a minute to spare. So we open up the episode with Porsha and her sister Lauren going over to Phaedra's house. So Phaedra has a nice spread for them. You know how it is when somebody passes away, there's going to always be some food. And even though Phaedra gets on my last good nerve, she's gonna always have a good spread, so 2 points for her. So Porsha and Lauren are telling Phaedra all about Londi and how they were always close. And now we find out that Lauren was on the phone with Londi when Londi passed away and took her last breath. I said, wait, come again? That has to be traumatizing. So now we find out that Phaedra is also assisting with the arrangements, and she makes a joke about how she's the chairman of the usher board in heaven. If anybody wants to get in, they have to see her for a seat. And I said, Phaedra, respectfully, I think the good Lord has that handled. I don't think that any of us need to pass through you to get through the pearly gates. Don't give yourself that much credit, okay? Girl, you better hope that you make it in. So now Phaedra mentions that because Londi loved butterflies, they could have a butterfly release at the service. And Porsha gives us one of her blonde moments. And she says, oh, are the butterflies released back to the trainer? And Phaedra was like, girl, no, there are no trained butterflies. And I'm not going to hold you guys. I could not stop laughing. I said, Porsha, you're thinking about doves. When doves are released, they come back. But butterflies, no. Now, will you guys be upset with me if we breeze past this scene with Angela and her therapist? Y'all know that I am sick and tired of all of this "I'm going up the mountain to save my marriage" talk from Angela. It's exhausting. And this scene had me confused and just scratching my head like, what are we talking about? Angela, do you trust Charles or not? It seems like there's still some hurt and pain about the infidelities in the beginning of your marriage. There is obviously something. Angela always sounds like a woman who's trying to convince herself that she's happy. And I'm so sick and tired of hearing about the ups and the downs of marriage, and all the downs are infidelity. Like, what kind of down is that? Maybe because I saw a healthy marriage, I just really can't get with all that, oh, marriage is just so hard, it's just such a chore. I'm like, my God. And for my folks who have a good marriage, would you mind letting me know down below? Do you feel like you are stressed and marriage is so hard and oh my goodness, child, it's just all this pain, but at least I'm married? Let me know. If it's all of that, no thanks. But for those of y'all with happy marriages, I would love to get your take on it. But my God, today, I said, Angela, is everything all right? And then when you told your therapist how your house is not selling, that's also put a strain on the marriage because Charles is upset. I said, my goodness, Angela, you can't get a break, it seems. And I'm sorry, Angela, but that analogy that you use, saying that sometimes you have to cut your finger off to save your hand in order to protect your marriage. I said, girl, I don't want to cut off anything. I said, I'm sorry. That was a horrible analogy, but okay. Did anybody else find it amusing that Angela's therapist is named Wendy. I said, look at that. We have 2 Dr. Wendy's on Bravo. One's in Potomac and one's right there in Atlanta. So Angela tells Dr. Wendy what happened the other day at Kelly's event, and she says, yeah, this random man came up to me saying that Charles is cheating on me, and I don't want anybody to think that my husband is an easy target. We've been through a lot. I thought it was telling when Dr. Wendy exposed how Charles has said in other sessions that he wakes up at night saying, I'm going to be targeted. And when Angela started crying about that, and she said, please don't bring that up, and I said, interesting. Again, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm reading way too deeply into it, but I really feel like Angela, not that she's afraid, but I just feel like she's trying to convince herself that she's happy with their dynamic, and she's not. Does that make sense? Do you think that I have an accurate read on their marriage? But I just think it's telling that when Dr. Wendy brought up what Charles had said in a prior session, Angela was kind of nervous and said, let's not talk about that, let's not go there, and she started crying. But Angela goes on to say that when her and Charles got back home that night, they were both confused as to why that man would approach her saying that. And then she goes on to ask, who would want to potentially destroy my marriage? And she plans on addressing it because she's tired of people poking at her and Charles. And I said, now, Angela, I get your frustration, but you have to remember the beast that is reality television. When you go on these shows, you are signing up for a lot. These women let you know from the beginning that your marriage was going to be under fire. So now we jump on over to Shamea's big night. She's having her showcase. Now, mind you, she's invited everybody in the group, along with producers, music executives, so she's really excited and nervous. Now, I thought it was funny when Drew got there. Drew was like, as a resident singer of this group, I'm here to see if Shamea's mic is on. And I didn't feel any way about the shade. I saw some folks on Twitter saying, oh, why would Drew say that? Who does she think she is? And I feel like just 2 episodes ago, Shamea was saying, nobody knows who Drew is. She's forgettable and all this stuff. Let's not forget how Shamea acted down to that radio station several episodes ago. So again, I'm confused at the outrage about Drew throwing her light shade in her confessional about Shamea. Brit and Kelly pay each other dust, and Kelly says that she was a great friend to Brit, showed her a lot of love, but unfortunately on Brit's end, there was no reciprocity, and now Brit is non-existent to her. And I said, well, I'm not surprised to hear that, because the way you guys went after each other at Phaedra's event, I don't know how you guys come back from that. Now the showcase starts, and I have to say, Shamea put on a show, and it was a long show from what I gathered, because there were outfit changes. Shamea had dancers. She had Miss Pat as the MC. At one point, Shia came out and said a few words. Then you have her husband coming up to give her some flowers on stage. So yeah, it was a full-blown production. Even Angela says that Shamea put some money behind this because the show was phenomenal. Now, was I surprised about that shade that Drew threw about Shamea trying to hit that high note and not quite finding the note? I wasn't surprised at all. So now the show is over, everybody's backstage, and we see everybody giving their 2 cents about the show. So Kelly's like, oh my gosh, it was amazing. I'm so proud of Shamea. And now we cut to Brit's confessional, and she throws some shade saying that I think Shamea's voice is nice, but the performance could have used some more work. I give her an E for effort. And I said, now hold on, Brit, not too much. Let me just quickly whack you, because I know that the same woman who would not even feed her guests at the country club is not talking about an E for effort. Your event was not even an E for effort. That was a straight up F. So I think it's really ballsy of you to say that somebody else's performance or showcase could have used some more work when your whole event planning skills are horrible. And let's not forget that your donations were a bit light. You showed up with 3 rolls of tissue paper from CVS and spent a whopping total of what, $12? You had to be forced into giving $2.50. So I wouldn't say too much about an E for effort. because your effort has been sorry. Miss Drew Sidora had me screaming. She was like, I mean, Shamea's songs could have used a bit more rehearsals. Her mic was on, but it wasn't on. It probably should have been off. I said, ooh.
I am a musician. I don't sample, you know. It's not Memorex. I go on stage and my microphone is on.
So while they're waiting for Shamea to come out, Angela brings up her gala and she wants to make sure that everybody got their invitations. They all say yes. And now Angela says that the goal is to feed 100,000 children. Now, one thing about it, it's clear that Angela and Charles love to give, and I love to hear that. I thought it was touching to hear from Charles later in the episode how they've gone to Skid Row, they've gone to shelters and schools, and they've fed so many people. That really just warmed my soul, because you're blessed to be a blessing. And the fact that they love to help, especially kids, it's very sweet, very endearing, and I'm just happy to hear that. So everybody's on board, and Drew says, let us know what you need us to do. And now Kelly jumps in and says, yeah, let us know if you want us to post something on Instagram. And now Drew turns to Kelly and she's like, how many IG followers do you have? And Kelly's like, oh, I think I have 150. And now we have Brit being petty and she's like, oh, she's talking about fake followers. So now we find out from Brit that Kelly bought 80,000 followers overnight. So Kelly's upset and she says, oh, I had no idea that I had somebody stalking my page. So Brit's like, no, girl, once upon a time we were friends and I know that you bought followers. Now, let me just stop right here. Brit is a prime example of why you cannot tell people your business, especially your friends. Because it seems like the minute you fall out with Brit, she's putting all your business, all your tea on Front Street. That was just so petty of her to say anything about the fake followers. And quiet as it's kept, I'm sure that Brit has bought followers too. Because if I'm being honest, 95% of these reality girls paid for their followers. I remember when the Summer House Martha's Vineyard girls got exposed for buying their followers. And we all knew that because nobody was watching the show, but yet you have 300,000 followers. You know what I'm saying? Like, the math ain't mathin'. And Brit, I would not be surprised if you also have bots in your follower count too. But let this be a lesson that if you have a friend like Brit Edie, don't say anything about anything. Don't tell her your business, because best believe when you guys get into it, it could be a small argument. She's going to unleash all your business out into the streets to try and embarrass you. So Brit and Kelly go back and forth, and Angela's trying to calm them both down, and she says, look, just tell your followers to donate. And the way Kelly got her lick back, because Kelly was like, oh, when it comes to donations, be sure to tell us the amount, because some folks don't know what to give. And of course, the camera pans over to Brit, and Brit looks real pissed. And I said, but Brit, you deserve that, because you tried to shade Kelly about her paid followers. So she got you right back about your cheap donations. Next time, keep your mouth shut. So now Shamea comes out, they all hug her. She thanks them all for attending, and she says, this is what support looks like. And now we cut to her confessional, and she says that she is sad that Porsha's not here, but she understands it. So Shamea goes on to say that she called Porsha, she sent flowers because they're family. Now, is it just me, or does anybody feel like Shamea is laying it on way too thick when it comes to her dwindling friendship with Porsha? Because I feel like when you're close to somebody, you don't need to say it constantly. But that's with anything. And the fact that for the last few episodes, we're getting these confessionals where Shamea's always saying, you know, me and Porsha love each other. That's my friend. I just love her to pieces. It feels like Shamea is trying to convince herself that they're okay when she knows that they're not. So everybody leaves, but Brit is still there. So Shamea's like, oh, Brit, I wanted to talk to you about something because Cynthia had told me earlier that you had said a few days ago that I was still talking badly about Porsha, and Brit stands 10 toes down in it. She says, yes, you have said things about Porsha. So Shamea's confused, and she's like, about what, Brit? And Brit says, you were telling me about how Porsha wasn't a good friend, along with other things as well. And Brit says, you can deny it all you want, but those messages don't lie. So now Shamea says, Brit, I feel like it's jealousy. You feel like I'm taking your friend Kelly. And Miss Brit Edie was not going for it. She was like, no, girl, the point still remains. You do talk ish about Porsha. That's it and that's all. So Shamea, here's where I have to whack you one good time, because the deflection of it all, I had secondhand embarrassment, because when you said, I see why you can't take shots and why you get butt naked, I said, girl, what does that have to do with the price of tea in China? We are talking about you being exposed for talking badly about your best friend. Let's stay on topic. And I'm sorry, Shamea, but in this argument, you looked guilty. I understand that Brit is aggravating, but I can always be objective, and I don't think that she was lying when she said that you showed text messages about the state of your friendship and you were venting about how upset you were with Porsha. Just own it. So they're going back and forth, and at one point, Shamea says, thanks for wearing clothes tonight. And I said, Shamea, really? That's the best you can say? Once again, Shamea, it screams guilt. Because what does Brit wearing clothes or not wearing clothes have to do with the situation at hand? So one thing about Brit Edie, when it comes to arguing, reading and throwing shade is not her strong point. So she says, oh, by the way, Shamea, did you see your daughter when you got to Miami? Shamea is pissed. She's like, don't bring my daughter up. And Brit's still going. Brit says, you did all that crying in Grenada. You were going through it. I felt sorry for you, only for you to be popping shots with Kelly in Miami. And now Shamea calls Brit a pill popper, just like Kelly did in the last episode. So Brit says, I don't pop pills. And by the way, you were lying on what your daughter was going through. So now Shamea calls Brit a lady of the night and a streetwalker. And then she walks away and says, have a nice night, darling. And now Brit screams out the rumors about Shamea cheating on her husband. And now we cut to Shamea's confessional, and she says, the rumors about me cheating have been around since your cat was a kitten, okay? Now let's just break this whole interaction down, right? Because I have a lot to say. We all know that at the beginning of this season, Shamea stated on her YouTube channel and in several other interviews that we were going to witness this horrible atrocity where Brit Edie said something awful about her child. We were all bracing ourselves for that horrible moment, right? Brit saying that Shamea was lying on her daughter's condition in Grenada. Was that petty? Was that foul? Was that messed up? Yes. There's really no reason to bring up the kids in any capacity. But Shamea, if we're being honest, Brit did not speak on your daughter. She mentioned her, but she was really coming for your parenting. Again, that's low, but I have to admit, Shamea, the way you were hyping up this interaction in the press, a lot of us assumed that it was a lot worse. So I have to be fair. She did not speak badly about your daughter. She was speaking badly about you not being there for your daughter. But overall, I will say that Brit was real nasty to even bring that up. To say that Shamea is lying is a bit harsh. But Shamea, I really do want you to come clean and just admit that you were talking badly about your best friend because you were upset. Now remember, I told you guys in the beginning that this finale episode felt so discombobulated, and a lot of these scenes were filler scenes. So we'll be skipping past the following: Kelly's scene at home, Drew's scene with Ralph, Phaedra's scene with her new boyfriend. No thank you, I'll pass. And one more thing, did anybody else roll their eyes when we saw that short clip of Brit and Mike looking at private jets? I said, you couldn't even feed the people at your event. You couldn't even give a generous donation to the people of Grenada, but you expect us to believe that you have the money for a private plane?
Shut up! That is so stupid!
And we can skip past this scene with Brit and her family too. I don't care. It wasn't interesting. I'm happy to hear that Brit and her sisters are on better terms. That's great. But I feel like we didn't get to know enough about Brit Edie for us to really be invested in her issues with her sisters. I'm sorry, y'all, but a lot of these scenes they could have kept. This episode did not need to be a supersized episode either. So now it's the day of Angela's gala for the Charles Oakley Foundation, and we see everybody arriving. Now, I thought that for the most part, everybody looked great, except for Shamea's outfit. I wasn't loving it. Again, Shamea, if you do come back for season 17, please invest in a stylist because the looks are just so dated. But Angela expresses that their goal for tonight is to hit $50,000. And I think that with this group, they could do it. I mean, Shamea could cut that check single-handedly. We know that Phaedra has her 50-11 jobs. She can write a check, honey. And we know that Porsha also has it. So yeah. And also, don't forget Cynthia. I think that with Cynthia, they can definitely hit that goal easily. So as everybody's arriving, we see Angela in another room, and she's on the phone with Drew trying to find out where Drew's at. So Drew says, oh yeah, girl, I'll be there shortly. I just got in the car. And now we find out that the other day, Angela and Drew went to meet up with Marcus to get the tea about who set him up to pull that cheap stunt in the last episode. And Marcus, like I told you in my last recap, that whole stunt fell flat. It was a big flop. Nobody was amused. It was just tired. And who does that? And it gave desperation. It gave thirst. You should never be that pressed for TV time where you would stoop so low and do that. So anyhow, production plays the whole flashback of Angela and Drew having their meetup with Marcus. And may I just say, why couldn't we have gotten this scene in the episode? That would have made better sense. Why did this scene have to be a flashback? We did not need those 4 filler scenes in a row of Kelly, Drew, and Brit and Phaedra to only get a flashback scene of one of the most anticipated parts of the episode. Production, do you guys think? But anyhow, we see Marcus lying about how he saw Charles at his restaurant in June. And Angela says, stop lying. Y'all are both bad liars because my husband was coaching in June. So Angela's like, look, stop the cap. Who put you up to this? Tell me right now. So in true dramatic fashion, Marcus writes down the name of the woman in this group who set him up to do this. And Angela reads the name, and Angela is shocked and appalled. And how could this person in this group do this to her when she thought that things were good? So Angela plans on exposing the person today at her own gala. I said this is about to be a hot mess. So the gala has started and we see Porsha and Shamea hug, and Porsha says in her confessional that despite what Brit told her the other day about Shamea talking badly about her, she's been dealing with so much stuff that this drama is low on the totem pole. And I said, well, thank God, because I can't go another minute hearing about this whole rift between Shamea and Porsha. Either work it out and stay friends or move on. Because the rest of us, we don't care. We've all checked out. So now we see all the women at different tables. They're eating their dinner. And I said, Brit, you see how when people have banquets and dinners and galas, they have food for every guest? Very mindful, very demure, very classy, unlike your event at that country club. But let me just let that go. But yeah, girl, that's how you throw an event. Everybody eats. So now we have Charles and Angela give a speech. They're thanking everybody for attending, and they honor 3 people tonight. So they first honor the CEO of the Meals on Wheels in Atlanta. Then they honor, I think her name was Dr. Erica. She's the founder or the CEO, I believe, of the PURSE Foundation. And then they honor Porsha. So Porsha goes up. She says, thank you on behalf of me and my cousin Londi. And she gets emotional. So Porsha walks off stage and she is overcome with emotion. She has to go to the bathroom. They all follow her. They're like, girl, it's okay. Wipe your tears. Take your time. We got you. So as everybody's comforting Porsha, we cut to Shamea's confessional. And Shamea says that she never wanted this group to change the dynamic between her and Porsha because Porsha is her person. And then she adds that she hopes and prays that Porsha knows that she loves her and she's there for her. And she says that she's going to put their friendship in God's hands. It's all she can do. Now, Shamea, I'm a bit confused as to how you can say that Porsha is your person when you revealed earlier on in the season that for the majority of your friendship, you've always bitten your tongue and walked on eggshells to not make Porsha mad. Is that really your person if you can't tell them when they've hurt your feelings, but they can tell you when you've pissed them off? I just feel like you're afraid to let go. And on top of that, you had to know that the dynamic between you guys would change. These shows change people. They change relationships. They change friendships. It takes two very secure people to not allow the show to come in between them. I honestly feel like the only friendship that has stood the test of time on Housewives might be Giselle and Robin. That is one duo where they made it clear, no matter what is said about either one of us, we take our problems off camera, we resolve it off camera, but on camera, we are one band, one sound. So the gala is over, and now we see all the women gathered around to talk. And Angela says, remember how I told you guys that I was ambushed at Kelly's event the other day? Well, I did think it was odd that the man proposed that toast at Kelly's event. So now Porsha jumps in and she's like, wait, are you blaming Kelly for that? And even Kelly's confused. She's like, I had no parts of that. Like, girl, bye. Kelly might be many things, but I don't think that she would do something like that. I just don't. That screamed Phaedra, in my opinion. So now Angela questions Brit, and she says, Brit, you and I got off to a rocky start. I thought it was you. So Brit says, no, I would never do that. I'm a married woman. I would never sabotage another married woman. And by the way, I wasn't even invited to that event, so why would I send somebody over? Like, I don't have that much power. And again, I never thought it was Brit either. Brit is too cheap or too broke to pay anybody to do that. Just saying. So now Angela reveals that her and Drew met up with Marcus the other day. And they're like, wait, is he here now? And lo and behold, Drew walks over with Marcus. She's like, hey, everybody, this is Marcus. Marcus, meet the ladies. So, child, when I tell you what went down in these last 11 minutes had me screaming. Before Marcus can even sit down, Charles Oakley walks over and he's like, excuse me, you gotta go. You gotta mother effing go. Are you serious? Like, get out of here, get out of here.
Excuse me, you gotta go. You disrespect that wife. Yes, you do. Get your mother ass out of here. Get out of here. No, he gotta go. It's okay. No, no. I don't want to go.
No, wait.
No. Disrespect you the other time, right?
At one point, I was nervous that Marcus was gonna get hands and feet laid on him because Charles was not having it. So Marcus is pleading his case. He's like, look, I apologize to you. I apologize to your wife. And Charles is like, no, 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 no. You dissed me as a man. I said, Marcus, just walk on out the door. Just do that because it's not going to get any better. Charles does not like you. You are an enemy for life. And the way they were all trying to get Marcus out the door, and you have Angela grabbing him. She's like, no, Charles, no. Just hear him out. Hear him out. And Charles was like, no, I don't want to hear him out. So at one point, you have Angela screaming. She's like, no, Charles, trust me. Charles, trust me. And I said, oh my gosh, are y'all okay? I just feel like Charles and Angela have a very interesting dynamic because the way she was yelling at Charles, he was over it. He ends up leaving. He's like, you know what? Get this mic off me. I'm tired of this. I'm too old for this. Bye. I said, I'm sure they probably got into a fight when she got home because he was not trying to hear her or Marcus out. Just a hot mess. So now Marcus finally exposes who set him up to embarrass Angela and Charles at Kelly's event. So he says, somebody in this group is not pleased with Angela. They all ask who, and Marcus says Phaedra. So you have Phaedra saying, what? Like me? Like, excuse me? And Marcus says, yeah, Phaedra, you set me up. So Angela says, Phaedra, how could you do this to me? And I said, oh my gosh, what in the Tubi hell am I watching right now? I felt like everybody was giving us some BC acting because this part felt like something out of a comedy or something. So Marcus says that Phaedra is the godfather of Atlanta. I said, excuse me? So you're telling me that we have to check in with Phaedra when we come into Atlanta? So Marcus goes on to say that Phaedra controls Atlanta. I said, she does? Y'all, this part was just so stupid. So they're asking Marcus, how much did she pay him? And I said, now hold on, because I've been hearing several different things. You told me on Twitter that NBC Universal paid you. Then I heard that NBC didn't pay you. It was Phaedra who paid you out of pocket. And now I'm hearing that you didn't get paid a dime by anybody. So that makes it even worse that you would do this foolishness and didn't even get compensated for it. Now, did I believe you about NBC paying you? No. Because NBC makes you sign a waiver and they say, we're not paying you for your appearance on TV. Do you want to be shown or not? Unless you're a friend of or a full-time cast member or you're getting maybe 5 episodes, you're not seeing any money. At the very least, you're getting the day rate and craft services and maybe a $20 gas card. So of course, Miss Phaedra Parks is denying it. She says, oh yeah, blame me, I'm an easy target. And then she says, why would I go after somebody else's marriage when my marriage was destroyed on national TV? And I said, hold on, you married a grifter, a user, a leech, a con artist. We never knew what Apollo did for a living. Every single season, he had a different job. At one point, you said, well, you know, I don't know what he does, child. You didn't even know what he did. And don't forget that you told us that he was a horrible husband and wasn't faithful. He was always at the strip clubs, not coming home. So you picked a real loser for a husband. So it was doomed to fail whether you guys were on TV or not on TV. Y'all didn't have a snowball's chance in hell of making it. I'm actually surprised that you guys lasted that long. So Marcus says that Phaedra met him at Phipps Plaza. She handed him an envelope with all the tea. And Phaedra says, I never even met you before. You're crazy. I don't know why that tickled me so badly, but I could not stop laughing. Phaedra was like, this man is a nut. I don't know who he is. Guys, y'all don't understand. I had tears streaming down my face at this scene. That's how silly and stupid this whole thing was. So here's where things get even sillier. Angela says, Marcus, tell everybody who the Connect is. So Marcus says, are y'all ready for this? The Connect is Junebug. I said, not Junebug. I said, in every black family, you either have a Junebug or an Uncle Junior. This really felt like we were all being punked at one point because this was just so dumb. Oh my gosh, y'all. This is just a mess. Porsha had me crying. She was like, who the hell is Junebug? This feels like a scheme that Todd set up. Aunt Bertha really did her big one with that because the fact that we say that in 2025 is truly something. So since they're all laughing, Marcus is annoyed and he's like, you know what? You guys don't want to hear the truth. So he leaves. And the way he got up and left had me on the floor. He was so over it. He was talking to himself and everything. I said, bye, Marcus. So Marcus is gone, and now it's the big showdown between Phaedra and Angela. So Phaedra's like, first of all, Angela, I don't have beef with you. Why would I do this? So Angela says, because of the ring. So Phaedra's like, well, what ring do you have that I want? And Angela says, a marriage.
Is it the ring?
What ring do you have that I want?
A marriage, right?
What
A
marriage do I want?
You want one, Phaedra? Because
Girl,
you tried
bye.
to come in between mine?
Girl,
You
girl,
did. You
you're
sent him.
deflecting. Because if
I'm
you
not
think-
deflecting.
I like
This is your
husband. You don't
character.
even know me.
So Phaedra says, girl, bye, you're deflecting. You're deflecting because I like your husband and you don't even know me. Now, Phaedra, let me just stop for a minute, right? You have to be honest. Anybody would assume that you were behind this craziness because you've been going after Angela since you got back on the show. You have referred to Angela as the secret wife of Charles Oakley, the phantom wife of Charles Oakley. She's the oldest looking young woman I've ever seen. She's this, she's that. She's like a school teacher. She's rigid. She's Barbara Walters. You've been nice to her face, but in the background, it's been all these shady comments, all these reads for no reason. So you can't blame Angela and the viewers for thinking that you would be behind this. And then for you to say, you know, I liked you, Angela. Why would I do that? Phaedra, stop. So Angela says, I'm not deflecting. This is your character. I know the moves you play. And I actually liked you, Phaedra. So Phaedra's like, you know, I liked you too. I mean, you know, I thought we were cool. And I said, now, Phaedra, I had no idea that you liked Angela. The way you've been talking about her like a dog in your confessionals every chance you get. Do you honestly like Angela? Let's be so for real. But Phaedra goes on to say that Angela is accusing her with no proof. And I will say to Phaedra's point, if you are going to accuse me of setting a cheap stunt like that up, I'm going to need better receipts. Angela, the receipts should have been a lot tighter. Just saying. I wanted to see text messages between Marcus and Phaedra about, okay, we're going to be here, come here, at this time, we're going to do a toast, so I'm going to need you to clink the glass and give that toast saying that he's cheating on her. Like, I wanted to see all that. You get what I'm saying? The receipts could have been a lot tighter, but Phaedra, I still think that you did that because it screams Phaedra Parks. So now Angela recites a line from The Godfather and she says, like the movie says, be wary of who brings you the information and you gave me everything. So now we jump to a producer asking Angela, how did she find Marcus's full name? And she says Phaedra told her everything. So Phaedra defends herself and she says, girl, he said his full name at the event. That's how I knew it. So now Phaedra says, with all the mess that I've been in with this group, to think that I would come back a second time and be in controversy again? Like, are you serious? And I said, well, Phaedra, you came back again being a mean girl. So it tracks. Don't act like you came back and you've been so sweet and nice and innocent and friendly. You haven't. You've been shady and messy for no reason. So here's where things take a turn. Phaedra says, girl, you're over here researching, but you failed to tell us that you're in foreclosure. So Angela says, that's not tea at all, sis. Now, Phaedra, let me just whack you one good time. Because what does Angela's investment homes being in foreclosure have to do with the situation at hand? Deflection at its finest. And also, you want to sit up there and be shady about it. It's not her main home with Charles that's in foreclosure. It's the investment properties. And don't act like Charles and Angela don't have money. So don't act like that's a read because it's not. Angela has been very upfront about how stressful it's been with these 5 investment properties and how she's been unable to sell them. Now, Angela ate when she said, what I do know is that you've gone from one failed friendship group to another and you're still doing the same stuff. I said, ooh, call it out, because the way she left Married to Medicine is a disgrace. And I think it's funny that she's the same woman calling them mean girls, but she's over here being a mean girl at her big age. Now, Angela was upset about that foreclosure comment because she's like, you're over here acting like your stuff is all together, but do you let your kids see their father? I said, oh my gosh. I said, child, here we go. So now Kelly's like, okay, that's enough. Don't bring up the kids. So Phaedra says, well, actually, I do all the time. So Angela's like, honestly, Phaedra, you're a horrible person. So now we cut to Shamea and Kelly's confessionals, and they both think that Brit is behind this. Now, like I said, I think that Brit is too broke and or too cheap and not too bright to even do something like this. So yeah, I don't think that it's Brit Edie. I think that for once, Brit Edie is innocent. Porsha had me screaming. She was like, honestly, I think that Angela did this herself. So Angela says, I'm sad that we ended like this, but I wish you the best in your investigation and trying to destroy my marriage. Now, mind you, when Angela brought up Apollo seeing the boys, Kelly had said at one point, let's not talk about the kids. Don't bring the kids up enough. So Shamea says, yeah, my kids were talked about and nobody said anything. So they're all like, wait, what happened? Like, who said what? So Shamea brings up how Brit said that she was lying about her daughter being sick the other day. And Brit's like, no, that's not what I said. And Shamea says, yeah, I had to walk away because I was this close to beating her ass. And I said, Shamea, you have too much to lose. We know that Brit Edie could use a coin. The way she's up there suing Bravo with this stupid lawsuit, she'd be suing you if you put hands on her. So Brit's like, is that a threat? And Shamea's like, you're over here threatening folks with guns, whore. I said, oh, not whore. So Brit gets up, she says, unmic me, I'm not doing this. And then she calls all the women lowlives. She says, I don't need this, I'm done, I'm out of here. I think it's sad that Brit really shot herself in the foot by acting so unhinged so early into the season. Had she just played it cool, we might have actually enjoyed her as a housewife. We see that Kelly's divorce was finalized, thank God, and the new location for her restaurant is supposed to open this summer. So then we see Drew. She dropped her album this year, as we all know, in March. She's having success in her career, but the divorce is still at a standstill and Ralph is still in the basement. I said, this man has no shame, because the fact that he is still there is pathetic. I really hope that come next season, that man is out of the basement and their divorce is done, because I can't go another season hearing about this. And I don't want to see Ralph. And the fact that Ralph is going to be at the reunion, like, why did y'all bring him? And it really is an insult that Ralph is going to be at the reunion and not Kenya. That just makes no sense. We see that Shamea has a new surrogate and she hopes to welcome a baby boy soon. God bless Shamea on that journey. I've said my thoughts about that earlier in the season, but God bless Shamea. We see that Phaedra is booked and busy. She's still with her boyfriend. Then we see that Angela sold 3 houses, but lost 2. But we do find out that there is a new venture in the works. She's gonna be selling fans. Now, that's a great idea, because every time we saw Angela, she had that portable fan with her. That is the perfect product for her, and I know she'll sell out. So good for Angela. But now we fast forward to 5 months later and Porsha is allowed to film in her gorgeous home, the one that she bought with Simon. So Porsha says that she's thrilled, and she says that she's happy that this time around with this divorce, she did not let herself be taken advantage of, and she fought the good fight. We see Miss Diane come over. They're talking about the divorce. And now we see that in February, Simon was detained and the divorce is on ice. I said, ooh, the shade of it all. Now, as we all know, Porsha and Simon are officially divorced. Porsha made out quite well in that divorce settlement.
Bling, bling, bling. Bitches is mad.
Now, Simon, I see that you've been doing a press run. You were on page 6 a few days ago saying that Porsha and her mom sought you out and they had ulterior motives. Sir, shut up. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. You and Porsha were 2 peas in a pod and you got scammed by the best. So I don't feel any sympathy for Simon. The game is the game. You're just mad that you got this time around, because you've been so used to getting over on these other wives, you can't believe that you got outsmarted the 5th time around. But yeah, I feel no sympathy for Simon. It is what it is. And by the 5th marriage, you would think that you would have your stuff together, but apparently not. And yes, I saw Porsha's People magazine interview, the whole cover with her emulating Angela Bassett's character from Waiting to Exhale. A lot of y'all had me screaming. You said, if we're being honest, Porsha was the secretary that her ex-husband left her for. I said, ooh, the shade of it all. But in all seriousness though, I want us to wrap up this whole Porsha and Simon saga. Next season, let's start fresh. A clean slate, because I'm exhausted. And I really wonder what Porsha is going to say about her divorce at the reunion. Are we going to get any new information, or is it going to be more of the same? And speaking of the reunion, why is this reunion 3 parts? Brit quit and Kenya was not invited. So what is there to talk about? There's really not that much. Every season does not require 3 parts. But then again, we might be surprised, because the same with Potomac. Potomac was mid, but the reunion was actually good. And they were 3 parts. So who knows? Maybe Atlanta might surprise us and it might actually be a decent 3-parter. But guys, that was my recap. I hope you all enjoyed. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you for listening on the podcast. And you already know what to do. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you all later. Bye.